Hello and welcome to Hawkeye Nation. This is HawkCast. I'm your host, Eliot Clough, at Eliot Clough on Twitter, joined by Ross Binder. We're joining you from Hawkeye Beacon, part of the Rivals Network, and big time pod today as Iowa has hired their next head men's basketball coach, Ben McCollum from Drake, after 1 year with the Bulldogs and 15 years at Northwest Missouri State. He is headed to Iowa City, his birthplace. Things come full circle after he grew up in Storm Lake too. So this is Iowa's first head coach from the state of Iowa since the early 70s. Dick Schultz, I think, is what I read. Um Ross, so that is
That sounds accurate to me.
yeah, right. Yeah. So
Before my time.
right. Stuff really definitely before my time. No offense. But before we get started, make sure, folks, make sure that you are subscribed here on YouTube. Drop a like, drop a comment. Let us know what you're thinking of the hire. Of course, we'll share our thoughts here momentarily. Also, subscribe, leave that rate and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify because that helps us out a lot. Also, we're running a promo one more time through the end of the week. That link will be in the description. You can sign up, get 50% off premium content. Hawkeye Beacon is about to be loaded with premium content the rest of this week. I'm still in Oklahoma covering the women's tournament. We got spring ball coming up. There are too many things happening for you not to sign up. We're going to have intel on all of it. So stick with us at Hawkeye Beacon. Again, that autofill link with the promo code IowaMBB will be in the description right at the top there on YouTube, as well as Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So, Ross, let's get into it. Ben McCollum, Iowa's next head basketball coach after they decide to move on from Fran McCaffrey. Obviously, I mean, he posts a 31-4 record at Drake in year one, goes further than Darren DeVries ever did while he was at Drake, going past that first round, upsetting Missouri in the first round. He's a four-time D2 national champ, five-time D2 coach of the year. Like, it's not a ton of D1 accolades other than compiling them all into 1 year. NBC Coach of the Year, NBC Player of the Year, NBC Regular Season Champ, NBC Tournament Champ, wins a game in the NCAA tournament, is competitive with Texas Tech down to the end. I mean, what are your initial thoughts here, Ross? This is exciting, and I know some people are still a little wary because of the lack of D1 experience.
Yeah, and I think those are both completely understandable reactions to this hire. I think it is an exciting hire. I think there were two top candidates for Iowa when this coaching search started, Darian DeVries and Ben McCollum. So you wanted to make sure Iowa got one of them before. If not, they were going to have to go into a different tier of candidates, and who knows what happens there. So you wanted to make sure they got one of those two, and they did. Like you said, McCollum's track record is just phenomenal. The success he's had at the D2 ranks was extraordinary, and it wasn't just like, oh, he was a good coach. Like, he was a dominant coach. Like, his teams at Northwest Missouri State absolutely just owned that division for several years. So it wasn't like, he put together one or two good teams. He did it consistently over the course of multiple seasons. Um, and that said, the wariness about the lack of, D1 and certainly, high major competition and success is still warranted, I think, to an extent. He just hasn't done it yet at this level. He had, one excellent year at Drake. Won 31 games, won the MVC, won the MVC tournament, beat Missouri in the tournament in the NCAA tournament. It was a great season. It's one of the best MVC seasons I think we've seen in a while. So I think that deserves a lot of recognition and a lot of admiration. And the fact that he did it without a lot of, high major players. He did not, pull in a bunch of high major players through the portal. He did that phenomenal success at Drake with, a core that he brought with him from Northwest Missouri State in the D2 ranks, and then supplemented with, a few other guys from some low major teams. So to have that kind of success at without, proven high major talent is also, I think, another feather in his cap. That, Iowa is a program that, for various reasons, needs a coach that can do more with less. How much less is to be, can be debated and, and figured out. But, they're not a blue blood. They're not going to be getting top tier talent. They're in Iowa, so there isn't a lot of that, local talent, high major talent available most years. So you need someone that's going to be able to maximize the talent you do have. And I think McCollum has proven that he's really good at doing that uh, thus far in his career.
Maximizing the talent, I think. Yeah, I mean everything you just said is what's key here. I think him being from the state, while some folks are like, "Oh, he doesn't have to be." It's a plus because I mean, for example, you talk about 2026, not the 2025 class that he'll have to revamp and presumably he'll possibly bring a couple of those guys that he had signed with Drake that I haven't looked into, but that's something we'll have on premium content coming up here shortly. Um, he's from Storm Lake. You know who else is from Storm Lake, Ross? Jaden Kuhn,
Yeah.
possibly the best prospect in the last few years to come out of the state of Iowa. And he's pretty damn good. He's a 3-star right now, but he's going to project to be I mean, he's got NBA potential. And so I really, really, and he was offered by Drake, by McCollum. So that relationship's already there. And if you keep Gatens, that's another plus because Gatens was his primary recruiter. So obviously that's not, the first thing to talk about here with this recruitment, but it is something to talk about with this recruitment. And to revert back to what you were mentioning, development, 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 and development in the backcourt, which is something Iowa fans have not seen under Fran McCaffery. So, with that said, the perfect example is Bennett Sturts, who had
Hmm.
no D1 offers out of high school, was a second player, or it was a second team all conference player at Northwest Missouri State, and then this year becomes an honorable mention AP All American, 19.2 points per game, led the team in assists, led the team in steals, led the team in minutes, almost 40 minutes a game, 39.4, which is crazy. He's like, he's mid-major, but also the capability of playing high major, like any high major would have taken him out of the portal
Hmm.
this year. I don't
Yep.
know what the loyalty looks like between he and McCollum. I'm assuming it's pretty strong. I'm assuming he's going to follow him to Iowa. I think that's a safe assumption.
Yep.
Um, he would have fetched possibly $1 million out of the portal this year. Just
Hmm.
the way, like his ability to just hang and make shots and to manipulate the pick and roll. And he's a big guard. He's 6'4", and he's a primary ball handler. I think I've said this on the pod. I've said it plenty of times in writing. Is he not like Josh Dix? Like, look at
Yeah.
it's so similar. And if
Yep.
you can get Josh Dix back, man, that'd be a fun duo. I don't know how likely that is because Josh Dix is another guy that's probably going to go make $1 million in the portal. But if you can have both, man, that would be fun as hell. And so, my point being, clearly McCollum can develop. Like, you have to be able to do that at the D2 level to have that level of success. You can be the greatest tactician in the world, which by a lot of accounts I've heard, and I quote, he's a legitimate genius. To be able to develop a player like that, not only develop them, but find them and mold them into what Sturts has become. Like again, any high major team in the country would have taken Sturts in one capacity or another out of the portal this coming year.
Yep.
So that, but also I think the one point that we've routinely made as well, he didn't have any high major players on that roster that he brought in. Two Wyoming transfers, like that's it. And the thing that stuck out to me when I went to watch UNI versus Drake in Cedar Falls is Coach Jacobson had a better roster. That roster was fundamentally better than what Drake had. And McCollum wiped the floor with them. Starts
Yeah.
wiped the floor with them. Like that is just phenomenal coaching. To do that to Coach Jake, who obviously hasn't had the success that he'd like over the last 10-ish years, but who went to a Sweet 16, who's been to the tournament, who's won the MVC tournament and the regular season title a bunch of times, produced an NBA player in AJ Green, like to have done that in Cedar Falls in front of the biggest crowd since they hosted North Carolina 10 years ago is just like, that Sam Cassell gif that I tweet when there's a big shot? It's that. It's
Yeah,
that. I it's easy to be optimistic right now, right? Because it's
yep.
just starting, everything's coming together. But there are just so many things that you connect the dots, and it's difficult to not be optimistic right now.
Absolutely. I think there's just a lot to be excited about based on what he's done and, how he's succeeded at these other places. That seem like they should translate really well to Iowa City. That ability to develop talent is going to be huge, and to find under recruited players and bring them in and develop them is that's something every Iowa coach has had to do to some extent or another, and McCollum has a tremendous track record of that. And now he's going to have a lot more resources at Iowa than he's had at any of his previous jobs. He's not going to be fishing in the same ponds that he was at Northwest Missouri State for talent or at Drake. He's not going to be, competing for the next Cooper flag, but probably, I don't know,
Or is he?
maybe. Or is he? Is he? Maybe. But he's Iowa will have the resources to allow him to compete for a lot better caliber of players than he was at Drake and at Northwest Missouri State.
That's a really good point. I think we get caught up too frequently in how few resources Iowa has in men's basketball relative to other programs. But it's gonna be like, to McCollum, it's gonna be like a whole new world. I mean, and to have him done, or what he's done with so much less than what Iowa will give him, that's a really, really good point that I think people are glazing over or haven't talked about a lot. Um, and I think what else is important here is he's gonna have the opportunity to recruit players that have played at the high major level or the mid major level, really high level, and say, look what I've done with a lot less before. Imagine what we can do now. Imagine what we can do at this level. Imagine what we can do with this level of support. And, we've talked about Beth Getz not being an AD that sits on her hands. I think McCollum strikes me as such as well. I think there's going to be a lot of change in this era, whether it's facilities, whether it's how he connects with the fan base. I mean, one thing that we've also said, and I'm pretty sure we said it when McCaffrey got canned, is that there's going to be an influx of support just because it's not Fran McCaffrey.
Yep.
But I think once folks start to learn more about Ben, that support will continue to grow. And there will be a level of excitement right away. I mean, I think people are going to be excited to watch Bennett Sturts play. I think
Yeah.
there's going to be an investment in the program that we haven't seen in probably a decade, maybe half a
Yeah.
decade, considering the Luka Garza years. But
Right.
um, that's an optimistic way of looking at it. But I mean, if I were a fan, I'd be much more inclined to be like, they got like, this is completely new. Let's go check it out.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to get that new coach bump. And then I think, yeah, once fans get to know more about McCollum and Sturts, if he comes to Iowa and, sees, saw what he did with Drake, in the NCAA tournament, that was a really great win over a solid Missouri team in the first round. And they ran up against a team with a little bit better talent and in Texas Tech in the second round, and then some matchups that were really tough for that Drake team. But there's just so much I think to like, and I'm really excited to hear McCollum's first press conference when he gets to talk to the media and talk to fans. I think people are going to probably get even more excited for him after that. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. I don't know. I'm curious when they're gonna have the presser, just because there's a good contingent of us in Oklahoma right now, and potentially gonna be in Spokane. So, and Kirk is gonna speak to the media on Wednesday. So I'm imagining it'll be after the NCAA, the women's NCAA tournament, or whenever the women are done, right?
Possibly. Yeah,
That's
I
what I
think
would
we'll have to.
assume.
We'll probably know a lot more after the game today. If they beat Oklahoma, like you said, that probably throws a wrinkle or a wrench into things a little bit. But if not, then it'll probably be later this week for sure, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, that would be my assumption as well. Hopefully, Bennett Sturts is just chilling in the back as the presser's going on, like Tucker DeVries was at Indiana. Anyway, there was another. Oh, in just a brief moment that this graphic has been up on our Facebook page of the hire, somebody has said boring basketball, and I think this narrative has permeated throughout a fan base that hasn't watched Drake at all and just said, "Oh, he's next Todd Lickliter. It's over. Okay, I'm done."
Yeah,
You watched any of it? And I don't know how many times I have to reiterate this statistic. From 2017 to 2023, Ben McCollum's teams at Northwest Missouri State were among the top 5 teams in the country in offensive efficiency. Not tempo,
right.
offensive efficiency. Those are two very different things. Tempo is Fran McCaffrey, offensive efficiency is Ben McCollum. And in terms of that efficiency, they were top 5 in the country, not in D2, but between D1, D2, D3, NAIA, and JUCO. And between, I think it was 2020 or 2019 to 2021, they were number one. That's points per possession, over 1.1 points per possession. That
Yep.
is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. And he said it before. He said it on multiple appearances, media appearances, whether it's podcasts or what have you, throughout this year that we're going slower than I want to. We just don't have the shooters.
Right.
And if he can get Price Sanford back, if he can get Cooper Koch back, if he can get Josh Dix back,
You'll
I
have some shooters.
that's some shooters. Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, and you were there, you were in it for the Todd Lickliter era, and I wasn't to the
yeah,
degree. That was like right when I started paying attention to sports. When was that era? It was 3 years.
it was 2008 to 2010
Okay, so I was,
or oh 07 to 10, some around there. Yeah.
yeah, I was just starting to really invest into sports. I was like 10.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have been able to diagnose the issues, but one, there were a lot more problems than just the coaching with Todd Lickliter.
Yeah.
But tell us how this is different.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll have to, see how it plays out, but certainly I think it feels a lot different just because of, the tremendous success he's had. And I mean, the tempo thing is, Iowa fans like a fast tempo, sure. He's not going to play at the Fran tempo, no question. That said, the Fran tempo and Fran's offenses were also, very efficient, not to the level of McCollum's, but they were very efficient, last several years. But that with that tempo, it came at the expense of defense and rebounding. Like these Iowa teams were consistently poor in those categories, and we saw, all the problems that caused the last few years in terms of, why are they not in the NCAA tournament? They can't defend. They can't get rebounds when they need to. So that tempo, like, yeah, it's great to score 80 points. Doesn't mean a lot if the other team scores 85 or 90, which they did with regularity against Iowa. So, I think with McCollum, you're going to see someone who does play at a slower pace, but who has an offense that gets good shots, emphasizes ball movement and movement without the ball. And I think you're going to see just some really good, offense that works. And then on top of that, you're going to see a team that is much more committed to defending and rebounding than we've seen in Iowa City for a couple seasons. And that, you know, TBD, the talent is the question. Can you get enough talent to succeed in the Big Ten? We'll see, when that happens. But I think Iowa's going to be competitive right out of the gate, and depending on, the talent is, going to depend on when they can, start contending for NCAA tournament appearances. But you're going to see a team that plays really hard on defense, that really gets after rebounds, and that is going to be a sea change from what we've seen in Iowa City the last few years. And I think if fans got tired of seeing Iowa teams that didn't defend backdoor cuts really, and that just
Low
let out
rotations. Slow rotations.
slow
Whoa.
ball rotations, that let opposing players just run up the court, or just go straight into the lane in the half court, and get up a shot or a layup. That just weren't getting those hard rebounds, or really getting active after those rebounds. That's not what we're going to see on the basketball court under a Ben McCollum coach team. That's has not been his approach at all. So that's going to be different, and I think that's going to be exciting.
Ross, I'm going to show you what Iowa men's basketball just tweeted. And for our folks who are on YouTube, hopefully you can see it and it doesn't blur it out here. And if you're not on YouTube, I just quote tweeted it. Oh, this is so good. This is so good. Can you see it?
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
just
the
a
tie.
spotlight. Yeah. It's a spotlight on a white button-up shirt with a yellow tie in Iowa men's basketball's locker room, for those listening. So good. Oh, chef's kiss. Mwah. I love it. Uh, but as far as what we were talking about there regarding the offensive efficiency, how the offense is going to operate, ball screens, ball screens, ball screens. There's a lot of, oh, you get two on the ball, that means you got an open shooter somewhere. Get a foot in the lane, you kick it to a 3-point shooter. These guys play hard too. You get the junkyard dog plays. You get the diving after loose balls. You get the rebounds amongst the trees. Their tallest player was 6'8". 6'8", Wyoming
Yeah.
transfer.
Yeah.
I mean, that like and they were among the most efficient in rebounding too. I mean, let me find one of my previous articles that I wrote about Ben, our coaching candidate breakdown. I'm just gonna read this to you here. This is part of our premium content, by the way, that I wrote about before the hire. But this just illustrates McCollum's team at Drake. And boy, do they play defense and rebound. This season, the Bulldogs ranked first in D1 in steals per possession, 13.1%, second in points allowed per game, 5.9 or 59.7, 22nd in steals per game, 8.8, and that's with fewer possessions. To rank 22nd in steals per game at, with so few possessions is nuts.
Yeah.
I didn't write that. That was a little added.
There's some
Fifth in
editorializing.
Yeah. Fifth in assist to turnover ratio allowed, which 0.754. First in opponent field goals attempted per game, 46.2. First in opposing teams rebounds per game, 25.3. 10th in offensive rebound percentage, 35.9%. And 18th in defensive rebound percentage, 77%. Like, those stats are so telling. For anybody to say this is Todd Lickliter 2.0, look, I understand the fear. That was a terrible era of men's basketball, but that is just flat out ignorant. Ben McCollum is not Todd Lickliter. I think he'll be
Yeah.
better with the media. Like that was the main thing that I've heard is I heard Todd Lickliter didn't even want to have a media day in his first year at Iowa. Like, and there's
No,
that photo of Lickliter going like this.
yeah.
Like, I just don't. McCollum is not that. He's a bolt. Like, pardon the analogy here, but considering where he's coming from, but he's a bulldog. Like he's get things done. He's this is the way we do it. This is how we're gonna do it. We're gonna win flat out. We're gonna play hard. Like there's no second guessing himself. There's no lack of confidence.
Yeah, and the Lickliter teams, like, it wasn't just that they played slow. It's like they just weren't really good
Right.
at almost at most things you're trying to do on a basketball court. Like on offense, they were good at shooting one year, his second year. But otherwise, like they were bad at getting offensive rebounds. They were bad at getting to the free throw line. They were bad at taking care of the ball. Like that's a recipe for some pretty bad offenses. And the defenses weren't great either. So it's like, yeah, watching bad basketball played at a slow tempo, that's torture. Yeah, that's awful. That's a recipe for turning off fans, which is exactly what happened. But, there's not the only real similarity between Lickliter and McCollum to any extent is the tempo thing. And, it's TBD just how overblown that is once McCollum is playing with you know, Big Ten caliber players and has a contingent of Big Ten, ready shooters at his disposal. Like again, we're not going to see the high flying, up and down the court Fran offense. Like that is in the past. But I think people need to stop thinking that, like you said, this is not just a replay of the Todd Lickliter era. Like it is, there are a lot of ways to play the game of basketball, fast, slow, in between, etc. And don't get hung up on this one, small similarity that may not even be that similar once he's got, a roster to his liking, honestly. So,
Right. Um, I mean, to me, I think let's start with this, Ross. What's your number one priority if you're Ben McCollum right now? What's your number one priority?
number one priority, make sure I've got the NIL to go get a good good roster. Like I need dudes. uh
Okay. Tell
which
me more. Like, what kind of dudes are you looking for? Where are you looking? Are you looking at the mid majors still?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at, the Drake and Colorado State and, teams like that these teams they had success, won a game in the NCAA tournament. Are there guys on those teams that could help me? Or they still have eligibility? But obviously, I need to look at the power conference ranks too. Like I need to look at the Big Ten and the ACC and the Big 12 and SEC. Freaking seven Sweet 16 teams. Um, yeah, like you got to see which players are not happy with their playing time, which guys can fit for what I want to do on my roster, and it might just need that push that maybe I can provide them. So I'm gonna cast a wide net for talent for sure, but that's probably where I'd start.
I think what I'm imagining is that you're gonna get Drake guys like Sturts, probably a couple more, whether it's the two bigs or maybe a young player or two.
Well, all right. Let me go back to my answer for 1 second. So
Okay.
first, I'm going to talk to my guys at Drake that I think can compete at the next level or at Iowa, and see if they want to come with me. What that's going to look like. Figure that out. Number two, I'm going to talk to the Iowa guys that went into the portal last week and
Yeah.
see, hey, I'm the new coach. This is what I want to do. Let's talk about your fit. And yeah, so you were gonna, I'm gonna talk to Josh Dix. I'm gonna talk to Cooper Koch. I'm gonna talk to Price Sanford and say, hey, what's it take to get you back?
Revises his point to take my point. Okay, fine. All right. Yes. You're looking at the Drake roster, you're looking at who you can bring back. You're on the phone with Price Sanford, Cooper Koch, Josh Dix. ASAP is possible, to quote Michael Scott. I don't think you can let, I mean, it's not that I don't think you can't let those guys walk. You're also on the call with Isaiah Johnson Arrigo. I know you haven't entered the portal yet. I don't want you to enter the portal. I want you to stick
Right.
around. You're calling. I mean, if you can get a hold of Josh Lewis, like man, I know you know what it's like up here. We're gonna win some games, man, and we could use you. And I'd love to get on a call with you and talk with you, and maybe in addition to that, you're building your staff. I mean, I'm assuming he's gonna bring his staff with him from Drake, but there's a lot more staff opportunities at Iowa than there are at Drake. Are you calling Matt Gatens? Are you calling Tristan Spurlock? Are like what other positions are you filling? What
Yep.
guys do you know? Because he's really well connected in the coaching world too. Who
Yep.
else are you calling? Who else like what guys are you going to bring up? Very loyal guy. As far as I know, will stick with what he knows works. And I frankly, hmm, I imagine he's going to use some of those coaching connections to grab guys in the portal. In that, I know this is how this guy would coach you. Here's my thinking. Or, for example, last year, Desante Bowen enters the portal. Fran's like, I get it. I want to help you. How many of those guys are going to say, look at Ben McCollum? Go
Yep.
consider playing for him. That is definitely a possibility. I think it has to be a situation where if you're Ben, you're calling in the favors, man. This is where
Yeah.
it starts for his first high major job. Um, yeah, I mean, I think that's where things currently sit. The other thing that I wanted to mention, comparing this to Darren DeVries, Iowa's probably going to save a lot of money
Yeah.
because from what I was told, no specific numbers, but his buyout is, and I quote, next to nothing.
McCollum's, that is.
Yes, relative to DeVries, who was 4.66 million.
Yep.
So now you're just paying Fran's buyout. You're paying McCollum's buyout, which is significantly less than what DeVries would have been, and you're paying McCollum his salary, which is probably going to be less than what you were paying Darren DeVries too.
Yeah.
Would have paid Darren DeVries, and you can take that money, you can invest it into NIL, and they had to have made some promises to Ben in order to get him there.
Absolutely.
So that's uh that's my initial thoughts. Anything else you think we need to hit on before we get out of here? And well, women are playing in the NCAA tournament. That's a
That's
little
right.
important.
Yep. Yeah. Let's not overlook. Yeah. The Iowa women play Oklahoma this afternoon at 3 o'clock Central on ESPN, playing for a spot in the Sweet 16. Should be really interesting game. Oklahoma has a really strong team, 3 seed, ended the year super well. I think they won 10 games in a row until they lost to South Carolina in the SEC tournament. Beat up on Florida Gulf Coast in the first round on Saturday to set up this game. Coached by former Iowa player, former Drake head coach, Jenny Branchek. Um, a lot of history there, which we wrote about. You can read that article on the site. They've got a great post player, Reagan Beers. Eliot wrote about her, also on the site. 6'4". That's the thing is, Iowa had a huge size advantage, no pun intended, entirely, on Murray State, but they do not have such an advantage on Oklahoma. Oklahoma has a lot of big girls to throw at Iowa, and that's going to be a significant challenge for Iowa.
They've got a 5-star who's from Waterloo West, Sahara Williams,
Yep.
that chose to go to Oklahoma. Um, so that's and it's going to be a fun game. I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of think Ava Hyden's the key because she's the biggest player on this team. And man, she's been so good lately. Like,
Yeah, she's had 3 straight games in double figures going back to the Big Ten tournament. She's been playing great. My concern with her, and my only concern is can she stay out of foul trouble,
yeah,
especially against Beers. That's going to be tricky. We've seen her pick up, like in that game Saturday, she picked up 2 fouls, real fast towards the end of the second quarter. And there was some,
yeah,
you
one of them
know,
was terrible.
yeah, the officiating was not good in that game, but unfortunately, you kind of have to expect that to an extent. So I was like, yeah. But yeah, I agree. She is going to be the key or a big key. And the other key, I think, is Iowa needs to be hitting shots from outside. Taylor McCabe needs to be in a good flow. Kylie Feuerbach, Sydney Folter, they need to be hitting a couple triples too, because Iowa's going to need to score on this one. The defense is going to have to play another great game too, but they're not going to hold Oklahoma to 57 points, I don't think. So,
Yeah, I don't see that happening
yeah,
either.
yeah,
Maybe.
maybe. I mean, if Oklahoma shoots like 5 for 30 from three, the way Murray State did, then maybe. But
We will see how that plays out, of course, later today, 3 p.m. on ESPN. For those who want to tune in, and do not forget, we have that promo code going. So much premium content coming this week, folks. Not
yep,
kidding. So much. So it's gonna be loaded. We got spring ball going ahead. That promo code is Iowa MBB, all caps. And if you want to just click that autofill link, it's down there in the description. Super easy to sign up. We'd love to have you. That conversation is going to be ongoing on our boards. We're talking spring ball, we're talking NCAA tournament, we're talking hire, roster construction, all that good stuff. So tons of stuff happening on our premium board, and we'd love to have you there. That's promo code Iowa MBB at checkout. Get your entire first year 50% off with us at Hawkeye Beacon. And of course, we will wrap it up here. We appreciate you tuning into this episode of HawkCast. Leave that rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Drop a like, drop a comment. What are you thinking about the hire? There on YouTube. Drop it and let us know. And again, thanks for tuning in. So much premium content coming down the pipe. So much already up. We are loaded over at Hawkeye Beacon, and we are just getting started. So we'd love to have you there. Once again, folks, I am Eliot Clough at Eliot Clough on Twitter, joined by Ross Binder. We will see you next time.